Welcome. This is D.L. Hughes from VelocityWriting.com, where you learn to write with speed, passion, purpose, and profitability. I'd like to introduce you to one of my favorite authors, if you don't know him already. I know he's not for everyone, but he is a guilty pleasure for me. Some might say he is too simplistic or too ethereal, but he sure could spin a story. I read his novella, In Watermelon Sugar, every year just to keep my surrealistic sensibilities alive. He came right at the end of the Beat Generation writers and is not always included among them, but writers can learn a few things about writing from Richard Brautigan, and that's coming up in 5 seconds. I'd like to invite you to subscribe. Also, click on the bell icon so you don't miss my latest videos. Please like this video, make a comment, and feel free to share it. There's more on this topic, including sources at VelocityWriting.com. The direct link to the post is in the YouTube description. Richard Brautigan was a San Francisco poet, short story writer, and novelist who reached his peak in the late 1960s, even though he did do some very interesting work after that. Brautigan had a troubled childhood, to say the least, and he suffered from mental maladies his entire life. There's little doubt that his depression finally overwhelmed him in 1984, and that's when he ended his own life at age 49 in Bolinas, California, which is just across the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco. A friend of his, Thomas McGeehan, said he was a gentle, troubled, deeply odd guy, yet his wry sense of humor and unique view of the world brought him fame. Besides his many books, he had 23 pieces published in Rolling Stone magazine, and he was poet in residence at the California Institute of Technology for a term, so he had some traction. He was a clever writer who worked metaphors like a magician. Near the end of his life, he was more popular in Europe and Japan than he was in the United States. His most well-known novel might be A Confederate General from Big Sur, but his less traditional book, Trout Fishing in America, sold over 4 million copies. If you want to read a novel that will flip your mind like a pancake, read In Watermelon Sugar. It's about a love affair. It's about a rumble with evil people. It's about tigers who eat a child's parents, and then the tigers help the child with his math homework. In Watermelon Sugar has a perfectly formed sentence that has always enchanted me. It is in watermelon sugar. The deeds were done and done again, as my life is done in watermelon sugar. He wrote several other notable novels, including the hilarious Willard and His Bowling Trophies and his Gothic Western The Hawkline Monster. His last novel is among my favorites. It's called So the Wind Won't Blow It All Away. It's a fictionalized reflection of his troubled childhood in the Pacific Northwest. It's about the consequences of decisions we make early in life and how they continue to affect us. In his case, the life-changing choice was a simple one. Should he spend his last dollar to buy a hamburger or buy some bullets to hunt? He made the wrong choice. Brautigan wrote several books of short stories. My favorite is Revenge of the Lawn. He wrote several collections of poetry, too. My favorite is entitled Rommel Drives Deep into Egypt. It has nothing to do with the old Marshal Rommel, or Egypt, of course. If you don't know about Brautigan, but are attracted to postmodern surrealism, satire, genius, and whimsy, then you're likely to enjoy his writings. He created some wonderful dreamlike scenes and symbolic images, along with the unexpected illogical juxtapositions that are the hallmarks of literary surrealism. By the way, I keep mentioning surrealism. Most think of it in terms of painting, but the concept gelled in a book by poet Andre Breton in 1924. It was an outgrowth of a post-World War I movement known as Dadaism. Surrealism is a way to reunite the conscious and the unconscious and join them together in the rational world. I'm enamored with this school of writing, and you can find links to my own novel, Jet Pink, and my poetry collection, Anti-Poems, in the description below. What can writers learn from Richard Brautigan? Well, I think at least 3 things. First, as a writer, it's your choice if you let your past dictate your future in a negative way. Brautigan had a deprived, abusive childhood. He had mental health issues as a young adult, yet he channeled that into a creative career. He transformed adversity into art. Brautigan took the absurdity of life head on. He saw pathos as quixotic eccentricity, not dreadfulness. On the other hand, today we have thousands of people writing about their angst. It is therapeutic for them, and that's good. But the bad thing is they are hell-bent on publishing these books. These authors seem obsessed with vindication, even though they often mask these melancholy self-revelations with the suggestion that they are trying to help others. Brautigan was beyond that. He transformed the tragedy of his life into something fresh and creative. No, woe is me for him. He was able to spin stories that transform the minds of readers in positive ways. The thing we learn is that there are many ways to tell a story, and Brautigan demonstrates that writers can accomplish more by using creativity rather than unadorned realism. Second, Richard Brautigan had a certain childlike quality about him, and I see that as a virtuous thing, but he received criticism for it. Lawrence Ferlinghetti was a well-known beat poet of that era, and he was the legendary co-founder of City Lights Bookstore and Publishers in San Francisco. Ferlinghetti even published Allen Ginsberg's poem Howl, and successfully demolished the cancel culture of his time. Ferlinghetti won a Supreme Court decision that favored freedom of expression. He was one of the good guys. But he didn't understand Richard Brautigan. In a Vanity Fair magazine interview, Ferlinghetti said, "As an editor, I was always waiting for Richard to grow up as a writer. It seems to me that he was essentially a naive, and I don't think he cultivated that childishness. I think it came naturally." I like Ferlinghetti, but I think that was a terrible thing to say about Richard Brautigan. Ferlinghetti broke the Picasso precept. Picasso said, "Every child is an artist. The problem is to remain an artist when they grow up." And Picasso also said, "It took me 4 years to paint like Raphael, but a lifetime to paint like a child." So Ferlinghetti missed the boat in his criticism of Brautigan, at least in my opinion, and that's something that Brautigan can teach all writers. That is, we must cultivate our sense of childlike wonder. That includes things like being curious, having an uninhibited imagination, and not being intimidated by the naysayers in our lives. Purity of heart can be a great thing. A sense of innocence and wonder is a prize we should all cherish. What's the third thing we can learn from Richard Brautigan? Don't be afraid to experiment. His sense of curiosity and wonder led him to experiment with all the major literary genres. He was a poet, wrote short stories, novellas, and novels. Among other things, he wrote mysteries and westerns. His unusual perspective on reality, his magical turns of phrase, and his wry sense of humor enabled him to create some remarkable work. The lesson we can learn is to be more experimental in our own writing. We get fixated on perfection, but perfection is an illusion. We may think we have written the perfect sentence or the perfect book, but people will find the flaws we missed, and they will pick it apart. So maybe you should allow yourself to take a more adventurous approach to your writing. Free your mind and take some risks. Don't be afraid to view your plot and characters from an oblique angle. That's what Richard Brautigan did. Have a great writing day.